Guys, welcome back to the channel. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. As you can tell, I'm going to be doing a solo video today. I did want to take a look in this video at the video that Coleman Hughes uploaded with some critiques of Nick Fuentes and just kind of this line of thinking that I see from a lot of people who are trying to explain, basically, they're trying to explain away his success. So in Coleman Hughes's video, it's entitled "Nick Fuentes Knows Exactly What He's Doing." You're seeing this a lot from people like Coleman, from Megan Kelly types, from Tucker. They're doing it in a little bit of a different way. Um, but what the gist of what's going on is that Nick Fuentes is on his generational run, as we all know. Um, Surging in popularity. He's becoming a household name in real time. And these more establishment figures and I would consider Coleman Hughes as one of these establishment type figures. They're basically just trying to explain away his success. So they blame it on the Streisand effect, or Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson blame it on disenfranchised, angry white men who are rightfully angry about the state of the world today. So they click on Fuentes's videos and he affirms everything they believe. So you're getting all this feedback from the mainstream who's very confused at why Nick is getting the support and the love that he's getting at this point. So I did want to take a look at kind of what Coleman Hughes had to say and poke some holes in it and analyze his video. I haven't watched it yet, so I'm a little curious to see kind of what he has to say and what the gist of his video is. I have a feeling I kind of already know where he's going with it when people um, entitle their videos when they're talking about Nick, when they title the videos, um, he knows what he's doing. I've heard that line of argumentation. I've heard that line of logic for years at this point. You know, Contrary to popular belief, as these people are scrambling to try to figure out why he's growing in popularity, Nick Fuentes did not come on the scene last year. This is not a new phenomenon. He has been doing his show since 2016, and all these people are, like I said, just kind of left scrambling, picking up the pieces, trying to explain away his success. When in reality, there's no mystery behind the sauce. There's no secret recipe to his success. He's been doing this for 10 years, close to 10 years, and he's been proven correct, and people like his content. So. This overcomplicating of his success and trying to explain it away is stupid in my opinion. So we'll take a look at what Coleman Hughes has to say. Just for some background, I've been familiar with Coleman Hughes for quite a while now. Um, I think I originally found him back when I was like a cringe, like libertarian centrist type, and I liked a lot of what he had to say on race issues actually around the time of the George Floyd riots and that kind of stuff. So that was the first time I kind of encountered him. I think he's been on Rogan before. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing, as I kind of got into this right-wing sphere, I kind of got in around 2018 or so. And Coleman Hughes appeals to this kind of this centrist bro mindset. I think he's not particularly right wing. He's like center right, I guess. He's not based on race at all. He's not a race realist. He doesn't. If I remember correctly, and Coleman, if you watch this, correct me on this. I don't think he believes in IQ really. I don't think that he believes in the predictive abilities of IQ. Basically, he doesn't believe that there's a racial component to IQ. So all this kind of stuff. I mean, he may say some good stuff about black culture or something, but he's not actually like getting to the meat of human biodiversity, um, race playing a role in IQ and things like that. So there's nothing actually like super interesting about him. It's frankly it's that he's black and he's pretty intelligent. I think he went to Columbia, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit before we start. But yeah, I mean that's Coleman Hughes. I've been familiar with him for a while since I was cringe, and then I became unfamiliar with him once I got based. Many such cases. Um, but yeah, so I mean, all you really need to know about Coleman Hughes, just to start, when you're listening to some of his critiques of Nick, this is kind of where you need to start. So we have his profile here. Coleman Hughes, Conversations with Coleman, Forbes 30 under 30. That means he's establishment approved. That's all you need to know. The FP, he works for the Free Press. Who's the Free Press? That's Bari Weiss, the FP, editor-in-chief of the FP, CBS News. Bari Weiss, Israeli spy, went to Columbia, worked on the David Project, with I'm sorry, not the David Project, Columbia Unbecoming, with BAP, Bronze Age Pervert, who's also Jewish. Bari Weiss is Jewish and she's a lesbian. She worked for Bret Stephens at the New York Times, learned how to become an Israeli propagandist. I mean, she's by all definitions, she is like she's Israeli intelligence, and now she's running CBS News. Now that Larry Ellison has purchased CBS. So this is kind of what you just need to kind of understand is the background. Like these people are not based. I'm probably preaching to the choir here. These people are not based. These people are not like groundbreaking, edgy thinkers or anything. These people run in the same circles. She's a spy. He's a Shabbos goy. It is what it is. So when you listen to their critiques of Nick, you just kind of have to keep in mind you have to consider the source. So yeah, I mean that's Coleman Hughes. What I will say before I start, I really don't. If you've watched some analysis videos I've done of people in the past, I do actually harbor a lot of anger towards a lot of these people who I've analyzed before. I don't feel that way about Coleman Hughes, actually. Maybe that will change after this video. I don't particularly feel that way about Coleman. I think he's an intelligent guy. Um, I'm not gonna throw the low IQ label at him, like I did with like Jason Whitlock or like Bryson Gray or Officer Tatum, Osifa Tatum. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't really feel that way about Coleman. I don't really know too much about him as a guy. He is intelligent. He did go to an Ivy League school for what it's worth. Um, but I think that this point that he's making is stupid and it's unnecessarily overcomplicating the rise of Nick Fuentes. So yeah, let's see what he has to say. Coleman, if you watch this, I'd be interested to talk to you. But yeah, let's see what Coleman has to say here.
The legendary singer and actress Barbra Streisand once sued a
Oh, we're already start. I knew we're starting with the Streisand effect. That's always where they go. That's always where we go is the Streisand effect because that's a very convenient way to to explain away someone's success. It's like, it can't be that Nick is a gifted orator and is intelligent and has the right takes. They have to explain it away by like, well, in the 80s, Streisand sued a photographer for taking pictures of her home, and then people came back and continued to take pictures of her home. That's what's happening with Nick. It's not that complicated, my guy.
photographer for putting a picture of her cliffside mansion on an obscure website, arguing that it threatened her privacy. Her actions backfired spectacularly. Before the lawsuit, only 6 people had downloaded the photo, but after the lawsuit, hundreds of thousands of people had seen it. The Streisand effect has since become a generic term for when an attempt at censorship achieves the opposite of its goal. If I were writing a glossary entry on the Streisand effect, I wouldn't put a picture of her next to it. I would put a picture of Nick Fuentes. Fuentes launched his career as a college freshman in 2017 with a barely watched show called America First. In Fuentes' telling, he was a mainstream Republican in high school. Then Donald Trump's rise radicalized him against immigration, and the experience of being ostracized by fellow Republicans for questioning Israel radicalized him against Jews as a whole. Whatever the truth of this origin story, it didn't take much for Fuentes to transform himself from a mainstream conservative into a lover of dictators, including communist ones, an across-the-board bigot, and a textbook anti-Semite.
I remember.
It's complete baby mind. Like, he's a lover of dictators. He loves dictators. Okay, he thinks that Stalin is a historically interesting character. These people have baby brain. Like, if you don't like the approved protagonist in the movie, then you're a bad guy. You root for the villain. That's bad. Did you know he's a villain? It's just baby brain. And yeah, I mean, this whole trying to explain away his success by the Streisand effect. And I mean, what he says there is kind of disingenuous too. He says, check this out.
Fuentes to transform himself from a mainstream conservative into a lover of dictators, including communist ones. Whatever the truth of this origin story,
Whatever the truth of this origin story is, if like Nick is lying about his origin story, like Like he's really pulling the wool over our eyes by lying about how he became extreme. And there's this whole thing that people are doing now with Nick, and they're just trying to pathologize him. It's this armchair psychologist, the who hurt you, the the mommy therapist thing. Coleman's doing it right now. Tucker does it. Megyn Kelly does it. It's been done to death, and people are trying to explain away. Well, not even explain away. They're trying to explain how he came to be this hateful monster who loves dictators. Dude, we all change our beliefs over time. I mean, you wouldn't like Coleman. Let's address Coleman directly in 2020 when I was well, I wouldn't even say 2020. I think he became popular before that, or maybe like 2018 before I knew all the relevant facts. There was a time where I liked Coleman Hughes. I was like, "Oh, this is good content." People change over time. We're informed by our life experiences. We have the ability to process new information like Nick did when he was supporting Ted Cruz back in 2015. We learn new information and we change. It's it's not this malicious process where Nick is like, okay, I'm not getting enough viewers. Let me radicalize, and then in 8 years I will be. It's like, no, he makes a good product, his show. He does it nightly. He's been doing it nightly for 9 years and people are watching because he was correct about the Iran strikes. He has been vindicated on the Jewish question. He has been vindicated on issues of race. He has been vindicated on issues um, surrounding certain specific people in the right-wing sphere at large. So this trying to figure out the recipe of his success, it's a waste of time because it's not that complicated, Coleman.
It didn't take much for Fuentes to transform himself from a mainstream conservative into a lover of dictators, including communist ones, an across-the-board bigot, and a textbook anti-Semite.
I remember because that's an important date to me.
Why?
And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday. Oh, I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's.
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer.
As he became more extreme, Fuentes began to
And we're already doing the clip farming already. I mean, what does he expect is going to happen there? That I mean, I guess for more simple-minded people, um, they hear bad guy and Nick saying he likes that person, and they go, Nick likes the bad guy, therefore bad guy. Um, I mean, maybe this is the kind of content that people at the Free Press like, where if you like somebody a little unorthodox or you root for the antagonist in a movie, then you're a bad guy also. It's really playing to like boomer brain. It's like you can imagine the kind of person that is like very upset that he is interested in Stalin. Did you know he killed people? Like, yeah, man, history is full of contradictions and people who have done horrible things and interesting people. Um, if Coleman was a fan of Napoleon, would we be like, did you know Napoleon killed people, Coleman? No, obviously not. This is all just grab bag stuff, and you can tell what they think is going to land also because it's like this as the seasons change, the attacks on Nick change. So years ago, I've been following Nick long enough to remember the older attacks. I remember he lives in his parents' basement. He doesn't even own a home when he was like 22. Like, aren't you guys the same people that complain about the cost of living for young people? He doesn't even own a home. He's a loser. When that failed because Nick became rich and bought a house, um, now we don't hear that one as much anymore. We don't hear the mom in his mom's basement anymore. Now that there's a new thing that they can glom onto, they go, well, did you know he likes Stalin? I bet you didn't know that. It's always something new, and it never sticks. So hopefully yours sticks, Coleman. Hopefully this is the one that people are really, maybe this is the video that is really going to open the eyes and take the wool off of people's eyes, and they're going to see Nick for who he is after your little video where you announce something that he said to the whole world on Tucker's show. We'll see.
experience what would become one of the most complete cancellations ever consummated in American culture. In his freshman year, he got harassed for wearing a MAGA hat on campus. After participating in the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, his network dropped his show, and a deluge of death threats prompted him to drop out of Boston University. By early 2020, he had been banned from Twitch, Reddit, and YouTube. After he appeared at the January 6, 2021 riot, and there was no evidence that he actually entered the Capitol, Fuentes was banned from streaming on DLive, and his bank account was temporarily frozen by the Department of Justice as part of what it said was an investigation, though charges were never brought and his accounts were unfrozen months later. By the end of 2021, he had been placed on the TSA no-fly list.
So far, so good. He's not being dishonest so far. So we'll see kind of where he goes with this. But I mean, so far he's telling a relatively accurate story. He correctly highlights that Nick didn't go into the Capitol on J6. Is kind of highlighting that he was unfairly canceled. So I mean, that's what a lot of these people do. Again, you hear this from like the Megyn Kelly types, the Tuckers. They go, well, he was unfairly canceled to get buy-in from their audience. So the audience nods along and goes, yeah, yeah, that's true. He was unfairly canceled. And then let me guess, he's gonna flip the script here in a little bit and say, but after he was canceled, he realized that he could get more views by saying more and more extreme things. And him being banned actually made people go look at him more. And that's why cancel culture is bad. Let the freaks talk. Let the hateful people talk. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. That's where he's going to go with this. So they get to play both sides. They get to demean Nick and they get to talk shit about him, but then also in the same breath say, but it is bad to cancel people. I mean, aren't you kind of fundamentally arguing for his cancellation? I mean, when you're, maybe not formally, maybe not technically, but like when you go on a video and drag a person's name through the mud and accuse them of being a bigot and being hateful and all this stuff, I mean, you are kind of putting a target on their back. So, I mean, you can say all you want, that was unfair, he was canceled, but like you're kind of advocating for him to be canceled. You're putting a target on his back. So, yeah, let's see where he goes with this.
Which is generally reserved for terrorists, as well as banned from Twitter, PayPal, Venmo, Patreon, Shopify, Stripe, Coinbase, and even Airbnb. Now, as a classical liberal, it's not hard for me to hold two thoughts in my head at once.
There we go. As a classical liberal, my guy, the dork web died years ago. It died on the vine years ago. I know. And here's the thing about Coleman. This is what I forgot to get into earlier. He was a big part of the internet or the intellectual dork web, intellectual dark web. There was a time, and it's so funny because this feels like just like last week to me, but I'm realizing it was like 6 years ago. So there are probably younger people who were following this movement who don't even remember the intellectual dark web time period. But it was Jordan Peterson, it was the Weinstein Bros, it was Ben Shapiro, it was Sam Harris, it was Rogan, a lot of peripheral figures like Coleman. They they experienced a massive boost in popularity when the trend was classical liberalism. Dave Rubin is another one that comes to mind. I'm going to be a classical liberal. That moment has completely passed, and it's so funny. I mean, to be fair to Coleman, he probably actually believes this, but classical liberalism is so dead, man. It's libertarianism with like added steps, basically. Yeah, I mean, the classical liberal moment has come and gone, and Coleman is still grasping to that vine. And it's probably profitable. That's why he works for Bari Weiss. I think Bari Weiss is a self-described classical liberal also. But that moment is gone, Coleman. And you had your moment in the sun. You were on Rogan. Everybody, and to be fair, more people know Coleman's name than they know mine for now. But the classical liberal moment is dead, and kind of flexing that and being like, as a classical liberal, it feels very 2019 coded.
Now, as a classical liberal, it's not hard for me to hold two thoughts in my head at once. The first is that Nick Fuentes is an American citizen.
I just love that. As a classical liberal and my big brain and my 190 IQ, I can hold multiple ideas. Oh, wow. Bow before the big brain Coleman because he's guys, be quiet, be quiet. He's a classical liberal. He knows what he's talking about. Guys, stop. No, 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 no. I I know you see Jewish influence everywhere, but guys, the classical liberal is talking. Let him talk. He's based. This is going to be based. Yeah, Coleman, we all know how smart the classical liberals are. Thank you. Big brain Sargon of Akkad here.
With the right to free speech and should not be targeted by the authorities for his views. And while social media and payment platforms are well within their rights to drop him if he violates their terms of service, it seems to me that the ham-fisted attempt to erase him from public life only drew more attention to his ideas in the long run, just as the Streisand effect would predict. However, the second thought is just as crucial. Just because he got viciously canceled doesn't mean that people should listen to what he has to say now. Nick Fuentes is a force for evil in American politics. He
Whoa,
hates minorities, he hates women,
whoa,
and most important of all, he
whoa.
hates the version of America envisioned by the founding fathers and actually wants to replace it with a religious dictatorship.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So he says he holds two thoughts in his brain at the same time because he's very smart. Don't forget that. Don't forget that Coleman Hughes is very smart, and he's going to remind you of that. He's very smart, guys. I'm just going to keep saying that he's very smart, because as a classical liberal, he's very smart. So he says that on the one hand, it wasn't right that he was canceled, but on the other hand, you shouldn't listen to him just because he's canceled. That's a major assumption right there. That is, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse there. You're assuming that he is only growing in popularity because he's been canceled. That's what he's the foundation that he's building his argument on. No evidence for that, by the way. He's just saying that as if it's true. There's no evidence for the idea that Nick is only growing because he was canceled. That's ridiculous. Um, I talked to a lot of people. It's so funny. I'll probably post the screenshot later, but I got a text the other day, and I've been actually keeping a list. This marks like the 25th or 26th person that has messaged me from my personal life. These are not like Twitter or anons or anything. These are like real people who I went to high school with, who I worked with, etc. Um, who have messaged me directly, texts, DMs, whatever, and said, "Hey, JB, I became a Nick Fuentes fan. I'm watching his show every night now. Dude, you were right. You were totally vindicated on Nick." When the Iran strikes happened over the summer, I got no less than 10 different texts within a week of people saying, "Dude, I thought you were extreme for a while there for sharing Nick Fuentes clips when it wasn't popular. But dude, now I'm watching him and he was so right about the Iran strikes. And you know what? The Jewish problem may actually be a real problem. I used to think you were extreme for saying that, but like, dude, you're kind of right." Those are verbatim texts that I've received. Those people did not text me saying, "Hey, dude, I've been watching Nick because I heard he was canceled, so I tuned in and I like him because he got canceled." That's not what's going on. There may be a little what the only point that I'll concede to Coleman is that there may be a little bit of I guess like more morbid curiosity that some people who have never watched Nick before they use that as a reason to watch his show. They're like, what are they talking about? Is he really this hateful? Does he just go on his stream and scream the N word for 2 hours? That's unironically what a lot of people think. They think that Nick just fires up the camera and says in kike Nick. Uh, oops. Anyway, um, he's not doing that. People tune into his show because they hear from people like me over the years that, "Hey, you should watch this. Hey, you should watch this." They tune in and they realize that it's not this hateful screed. It's actually very informative. Then also his predictions are just correct. I remember in the lead up to the 2024 election, I was talking to people in my personal life saying, "I'm not voting this year," and a lot of people in my personal life were like, "Wait, I thought you were a Trump guy. You used to be a big Trump guy." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it. I'm going to follow what Nick is saying here. I think that we're going to go to war with Iran. I think we're going to strike Iran. I have some serious concerns about that, and I think he's beholden to the Israel lobby." A lot of people looked at me like I had two heads. I'll never forget. There was this boomer who I met at a restaurant one time, and we got to talking about politics and quickly realized that we were both conservative. He looked at me, and it was so funny because we were having a very fruitful convo, and and he starts going in on pro-Trump stuff, and I'm nodding along, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not thrilled about the Iran situation." He looks at me and he goes, "Iran, huh?" It was not on people's radar. You cannot overstate the extent to which Iran was not on people's radar, and you looked like a crazy person for having concerns about that, just like that boomer looked at me with. Nick got that right, Coleman. Nick got that right. You didn't get that right. Were you on your show saying, "Hey guys, I think that we're going to strike Iran in 8 months"? Nope. You were probably, I don't even know what he was doing during the 2024 election. He was being a big brain classical liberal in the corner somewhere. But Nick was getting predictions right. And that's why he's pulling 50,000 a night on a show, 30,000 a night on a show. It's because his his analysis is correct. It is not this this very low frequency understanding of media and Nick's popularity, this low frequency thing Coleman is saying. I think he's popular because he got canceled and then people wanted to tune in and then they just stuck around. Okay, well then how would you explain why they stuck around, Coleman? Did they stick around because they're just dopes and they're stupid? Or are they sticking around because they tuned in to something people said was incorrect or was hateful and they were like, wow, this guy's actually correct. Why did they stick around, Coleman? It's because the analysis was prescient.
If conservatives are actually trying to conserve what is good in the American political tradition and prevent radical changes in direction, then they should recoil against Fuentesism with every atom in their bodies. The words racist and misogynist have been abused to the point of meaninglessness.
Exactly. I mean, he is right about that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of conservatives, a lot of conservatards do this, and then they really harp on the founding fathers, and Nick, they go with like Nick Fuentes isn't a real conservative, and his ideas are hateful and bigoted, and he doesn't even like the founding fathers. Look, I'm sorry. I respect the founding fathers. I am grateful that they founded this country. I think they were intelligent men. But this founding fathers worship and the Constitution worship, it's like the quote from No Country for Old Men. If the rule that you followed got you to this point, of what use was the rule? I know that that's a little overplayed at this point, but it's true. It's like, look, utmost respect for the founding fathers, but I'm not going to not listen to someone because you're telling me that the founding fathers wouldn't like that person. We're not even saying that Nick hates the founding fathers. We're going like we're extrapolating even further. We're going like Nick, the founding fathers wouldn't like Nick, so you shouldn't listen to him. Look, man, they're not God, okay? I'm sorry. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in God. Um, I'm a Catholic. Nick Fuentes is a Catholic. He tells people to go to church, tells people to get married, contrary to popular belief. Um, I'm not going to be dissuaded from listening to someone. I'm basically being bullied by the ghost of the founding fathers. I'm not I'm being bullied by you invoking the name of the founding fathers. There's like 3 degrees of separation here. I'm just not going to not listen to somebody because you're telling me that people from 400 years ago, 300 years ago wouldn't have liked him. I listened to Nick Fuentes in 2025 because he's correct. You're not going to dissuade me from listening to somebody who's correct because you're telling me that somebody that I'm supposed to revere possibly wouldn't like him. Um, and what is Coleman Hughes even talking about here? He's saying that if conservatism wants to conserve anything, I mean, that's kind of the problem, is that it's kind of a bankrupt ideology, no? Like you're saying, if conservatives want to conserve anything, they will denounce Nick. Part of the explanation for the rise of Nick Fuentes is that conservatism has failed to conserve anything. That was one of the talking points during Groyper War when people were questioning Charlie Kirk, rest in peace. People were saying, what has conservatism actually conserved? That's a valid question, and that is the kind of stuff, the the lack of an answer to that question is a part of the explanation for Nick Fuentes' rise. And Coleman Hughes is saying if they want to conserve anything, the first thing they would do is not make a better life for young people, not secure our borders. They should denounce Nick. Yeah, that's going to make people's lives much better, Coleman. If the Republicans denounce Nick Fuentes, then young people will start getting degrees out of college again, and the border and will deport all the illegals. If only they denounce Nick Fuentes. No, on the contrary, part of the rise of Nick Fuentes is the inability to answer the question, what has conservatism conserved? That is part of the explanation of his surge in popularity. You're not even answering that question. Notice Coleman is spending more time trying to get conservatives to denounce Nick Fuentes than he is trying to answer the question of like, what about conservatism is so bankrupt that people would listen to Nick Fuentes, who admittedly doesn't even identify as conservative, really. Like he's not trying to answer that question, and that's part of the problem. you're not sitting here talking about how to make a better life for the young people. You're not sitting here talking about getting people to go to mass. You're not talking about how we can, secure a better future for college graduates and white people. No, your big concern is have they denounced Nick Fuentes? Well, you spinning your wheels on these kind of questions explains his rise, ironically. So you're you're unintentionally like over the target, Coleman.
in American discourse over the past decade. Social media activists have cried wolf so many times that very few people now bother to listen. But the point of the boy who cried wolf parable is that eventually the wolf arrives, and when it does, nobody is as alarmed as they should be. Like Aesop's wolf, Nick Fuentes has indeed arrived. And just as in the fable, mainstream conservatives do not seem appropriately alarmed.
Appropriately alarmed. Oh my gosh. This guy has been hanging out with the Jews a lot. He's been hanging out. He's been going to Shabbat. He's been going to the Shabbat dinners on Saturdays. They are not adequately concerned about Nick. We need to get them concerned. We need to get the Goyim concerned about Nick. They're not angry enough about him. I don't know why. Why are they not angry at him? It's so he's been hanging out with them, you can tell. They're not adequately concerned. Yeah, dude. There is a little bit of truth to what he's saying though, in that in that the racist label has been overused and that people are not adequately outraged by the racist label anymore. So they are a little bit more willing to kind of go outside of legacy media and experiment with like alternative media. But the thing is that it's what I said earlier. That only works with morbid curiosity. So what I'm saying is that while Coleman is correct that the racist label has been overused and probably does pique people's curiosity with regards to Nick, that only works for like an instant. Maybe they'll go to his Twitter. Maybe they'll go watch a clip. But what's happening though is that they're tuning in and realizing he's not just being unfairly labeled as racist, or I mean he owned that label. It's that it's not only that he's being unfairly labeled by something or being demonized, it's that people are tuning in and realizing he's correct. That's what Coleman's missing. You can sit there all day and say, well, they're only watching him because of the Streisand effect. They're only watching him because we've abused the racist label. Yes, that works for a split second. You do not get 50,000 viewers a night if you're just incorrect and your only claim to fame is that you were either canceled or called a racist. That only takes you so far. You have to be good. You have to be intelligent. You have to be able to predict things. You have to be able to look a little deeper. And Nick has done that, and that's what explains his rise, not this ad hoc. Well, it's only because he got canceled. That works for a split second. That does not retain viewers, Coleman.
As demonstrated by his recent friendly appearances on Tucker Carlson's show, as well as other demonstrated by his recent friendly Fuentes has indeed arrived. And just as in the fable, mainstream conservatives do not seem appropriately alarmed. As
The Goyim are not appropriately alarmed. What are we going to do? Yeah, Coleman, go talk to your Jewish boss about it.
demonstrated by his recent friendly appearances on Tucker Carlson's show, as well as other popular podcasts like Dave Smith's Part of the Problem, the Red Scare podcast, and the PBD podcast. How has Fuentes achieved this remarkable infiltration into the culture? Well, it's all been made possible by the fact that he's successfully playing a double game, and the people giving him friendly interviews are enabling this. There's not one.
Okay. So here we go with the pathologizing and the overcomplicating it. Like we're trying to find the secret recipe. So it's not that Nick is intelligent, it's not that he's funny. And even the funny label, I'm really getting tired of that when people try to explain his success by saying he's a funny guy. Look, love him or hate him, he may be the worst man to ever live, but he is funny and he is good at presenting. It's like, no, he is correct. He is correct. That is what explains the rise. And Coleman is gonna he's pulling up like a whiteboard and he's gonna do a Nick is playing a double game. It's a what do they call it in sales? Bait and switch. It's a bait and switch. He shows you this and then he does this while he's secretly doing it. Dude, he's correct. And people like that he's correct and they continue to watch. Very simple.
Nick Fuentes. There's two. There's the unfiltered Fuentes who rants directly to his followers on Rumble and can barely go 5 minutes without saying something heinous about Jews, blacks, Hispanics, or women.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it fucking isn't at all. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And we would live in paradise.
Including you, Coleman. You need to be in jail for disrespecting Nick. We're putting you in jail. You have 100 days, Coleman.
It's that simple.
This version of Nick Fuentes verbally abuses his followers in the way that an insult comic might do, and they love it. He doesn't act particularly religious, and he certainly isn't preachy. He's laughing and smiling the whole time, and his followers basically feel like they're hanging out with a crass but hilarious buddy, listening to him take the piss out of everybody, including them.
Yeah, I mean, there's some truth there. But again, I mean, what Coleman is basically saying is that he has two different ways that he presents to people. He goes on podcasts and moderates, but then on his show, it's this screed. And I also take a little bit of issue with like how he's characterizing his show. I mean, obviously he is a little bit more like lax in his show, and he um throws caution to the wind a little bit. He can just be a little bit more free with what he says. I mean, yeah, that's fair, but Coleman is acting like, when he turns on the camera, it's just like, like for example, I just got done watching Nick's show from last night, where he breaks down the purchase of TikTok, the purchase of CBS News and Warner Brothers. He breaks down the purchase of CBS News, who is your boss, Coleman. Bari Weiss is your boss. You work for a Jewish lesbian. So let's not forget that. You work for a Jewish lesbian Israeli spy, by the way. I watched his show from last night, and he spends about 2 hours very methodically, very detailed, breaking down the purchase, who these people are, who the Ellisons are, who Bari Weiss is, um, who Sumner Redstone is, who Sherry Redstone is, breaks it all down. Not once, and it's so funny. Coleman says he can't even go 5 minutes. I'm giving Coleman a Jewish voice now because he's like spiritually Jewish. When he said they're not appropriately upset, I just see a Jewish person now. I'm sorry, Coleman, you're Jewish now. You're the most loyal Shabbos goy, I guess. Um, Coleman says he can't even go 5 minutes without saying a slur or insulting. I mean, I just watched about 2 hours of analysis where he breaks down the purchase of CBS, your Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss, Coleman. He breaks it down without saying slurs. Like, what he's really talking about is the super chats, if we're being honest. The super chats are where he kind of riffs a little bit. You get some more free nigga thinking ideas, and it's interesting and it's funny. You don't have that appeal. These people are not interesting. Is Coleman Hughes particularly funny? Is he engaging? Are you going to tune in every night to see the Coleman Hughes show? No. They're upset and they're scrambling because Nick is better at their job than they are, better at the job than they are. And he can also contrast that with being very serious, very analytical. So I take issue with the idea that like, every 5 minutes on his show, he's just saying the N word. Also, they really seem to be in love with that clip where he says, women need to shut the fuck up, blacks need to be in prison, Jews run society. I mean, is that wrong? I don't think that that's wrong. Um, yeah, women do need to shut up. That's correct. Jews are running society largely. And most black people probably need to be in prison, if we're being honest. Does that apply to Coleman Hughes? Well, yes, because he insulted the leader. But yeah, I mean, look, here's a good example. Who asked him this? It was on the Piers Morgan show. And Piers asks him, so you really stand by that, huh? That most black people need to be in prison. Wow, just wow. Well, okay. Nick used the stat that something like 5% of all black men will commit a murder in their life. Insane stat. Really think about that. If you picked 100 random black people, black men, five of them will have committed a murder. That's insane to think about. But even more jarring to think about is the fact that 33% of black men have felonies. So let's start there. Let's just start right there with the felonies. That's 33% of people that we could put away in jail for anywhere from 5 years to the rest of their life. If you commit a felony, I think it's pretty standard that you need to go to jail. That's 33% right there of black men. Okay. And then you get into stuff like, you know, juries letting people off because they're black, you get underreported crimes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think we're probably already at a pretty sufficient number of black people that need to go to jail. I think that's obvious. Including Coleman, by the way. Coleman, you need to be in jail. Um, and yeah, I mean that like they love that quote because it's like it's shocking to hear. But that line, that video specifically, I've been sent that by probably a dozen of my close friends. Right, maybe not a dozen, maybe like half a dozen, 6 to 8, um, who have sent me that clip and they love it. They think he's right. So I mean, you can play um, teacher here. You can play therapist and go, they're not adequately concerned. No running in the hallways. Stop it. You're laughing too much. You're noticing too much. Whatever. I mean, I'm getting very school marmy teacher vibes from Coleman um, in this video. And I mean, you can do that all you want, but the people are liking it, Coleman. It is what it is. You are a day late and a dollar short to this party because the cat's out of the bag. Not to mix metaphors, but yeah, the cat's out of the bag, dude. And no amount of screeching, no amount of Shabbos Goy, good boy points, no amount of screeching from your Jewish lesbian Israeli boss, Barry Weiss, is going to put that cat back in the bag. It's over.
Then there is the comparatively sane character that Nick Fuentes plays on the podcast circuit. This version of Nick Fuentes is a serious Catholic. He's clearly read lots of books. He's earnest. He doesn't joke or curse very much. His vision of the country has much more to do with preserving what he describes as a white suburban American way of life, think Little League baseball and hot dogs on the 4th of July, than with a hostile theocratic takeover of the federal government.
There is a legitimate need to reassure people, and this is kind of what I've been doing on these podcasts, that we don't want to harm anybody. We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to harm anybody. Right. We just want to put America first.
All of this brings up a few questions about Fuentes' sincerity. First, if his main fear is that the next generation of Americans won't be white enough, then why does he tell his followers that modern women are too annoying to bother with?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing this. We do this every time. It's like Groundhog Day. We do this every time. Every time. Is there like a memo that goes out to these people where like, well, he says he wants to fix the birth rates, but he also thinks women are annoying. Ever thought of that? Let's get to that in a second. We'll get to the woman thing shortly, but yeah, I mean, it's not that complicated, Coleman. People talk differently based on the company that they're around. I mean, I, I don't know anybody who doesn't do that. And it's not disingenuous. It's not dishonest. It's not deceitful. Yeah, I speak differently on my show, on my channel, than I do when I'm having a beer with my best friend, the best man in my wedding. Yeah, I do talk a little differently. Yeah, some slurs fly. I know. Put on your big boy ears. Yeah, slurs fly. Yeah, we talk about women in an objectifying way. Shocking. I know. I know. I know. I thought we were playing tiddlywinks. I thought we were in kindergarten. I know. I'm sorry, Coleman. But yeah, that's how people who don't have Jewish bosses, Jewish lesbian Israeli spy bosses, that's actually how they talk in real life. So, you know, I guess what Coleman is getting at is that Nick is authentic. Um, and he's actually saying the opposite. He's saying he's like inauthentic. He's lying. Uh, there's actually like he's probably the most authentic commentator out there. He's vulnerable, and not to sound gay, but like he makes himself vulnerable. He he doesn't put on a facade of the fake machismo thing. Um, I mean, think about how easy it would be to play that role. That's what people really want, and that's what Nick goes off on. Is people want him to play the Matt Walsh role. They want him to grow his beard out and smoke a cigar and drink whiskey and bourbon and go hunting. No, dude, he's authentic, and that's something you'll never understand. That's something that the Free Press, Coleman, Tucker, Megan, you name it, they will never understand the actual authenticity because they're not authentic themselves. Um, and yeah, people can clock that. People have consumed enough media at this point to tell when people are not being authentic. Um, yeah, I don't know why that's so shocking that like you speak a different way based on who you're around. Like that's basic presentation. That's basic communication. Obviously, know your audience. Yes, I am not going to talk the same way to my grandma that I'm going to talk to my best friend after we've had a couple beers and went out for the night. That doesn't make me a liar. That doesn't make me dishonest at all. And also, nothing that Nick has said in these podcasts and these interviews that Coleman is kvetching about, nothing he said in either of those things or in these more mainstream interviews contradicts anything that he said on his show. I'll grant you, Coleman, that maybe it's a little bit more polished. Maybe there's a little less swearing. Okay. But what has he said actually? And this is a serious question. What has he said, Coleman Hughes, in these interviews that contradicts what he has said on his show? I would say that there's nothing that contradicts itself. It's the same, it's different packaging. Like, so, unless you can show me a direct contradiction, um, then you're full of shit.
Then why does he tell his followers that modern women are too annoying to bother with and that married men are cucks?
Fuck you. Fuck you. Pussy whip bitch. Yeah, all these people posting this like wife and husband content. It's so funny when my wife tells me to do stuff. I'm such a pussy. Ugh. Imagine such a pathetic existence.
Shouldn't he be encouraging his followers to get along with women, marry?
He does. He does tell his followers to get married all the time. Um, Look, I'm really starting, and Nick was right, vindicated on this too. The woman question and the Jewish question are two very prescient issues, and they act as a filter. If you as a guy cannot um uh recognize what Nick is saying when he is ragging on modern women and really just women as a whole, then you're a simp, basically. You're a simp. You are going to get dominated by your wife. You have a weak constitution. You do not have the balls that it takes. Ironically, if you are so enamored with this husband wife lifestyle, and I'm going to go run through the lily fields with my wife in her sundress, and we're going to go to the honey market, and we're going to buy fresh fruit on Saturdays, and I'm going to push the stroller, and I'm going to hold my wife's hand, and I'm not going to say anything offensive because that would make Sweetie mad. If you think like that, you are ironically like not constitutionally capable of leading a family. Like you're just not. And it really signifies like a weak constitution, a weak approach to life. If you're taking issue with the fact that wife guys exist, everybody knows what a wife guy is. It's the guy who goes, well, I mean, I want to go out. I gotta run it by the old ball and chain first. Happy wife, happy life. Am I right? Happy wife, happy life. Am I right? That is the kind of thing Coleman is saying that Nick should be telling his followers to say. Tucker ironically said that, and Nick had to like hold back laughter um, to not go off on that. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's really what Coleman is saying. He's saying that, well, he wants white birth rates to increase, but why doesn't he kiss his wife's ass? Why doesn't he tell his followers to kiss their wife's ass? Huh? I bet he's never thought of it that way. I bet nobody's thought of it that way. If you want white birth rates to rise, why don't you just be a slave to your wife? I mean, look, I don't think Coleman's married, and married guys are a slave to their wife guys are slaves to their wives. Coleman is a slave to not a wife, but a female, a Jewish lesbian Israeli spy female. So maybe he's like living vicariously through the married people, and it represents itself, it plays itself out as he is a slave to a Jewish lesbian Israeli spy, Bari Weiss. Maybe that's why, because a lot of these wife guys, they get very defensive when you poke fun at their sweetie. And they get very offended, and they get defensive, and they go, no, my wife is perfect. Almost reflexively, that's what Piers Morgan was doing, and he's cucked. But maybe Coleman is doing that because he feels like he's married to the lesbian Jewish spy, Bari Weiss. Maybe he feels like he has to defend his beautiful princess and be a good Shabbos goy for her. But again, it goes back to the thing that these people are constitutionally weak. You can't stand up to your Jewish boss, and wife guys can't stand up to their wives. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get mad at Nick for telling people what it is on gender. He's laying it out. It is what it is. I'm a married guy. I have a kid. Um, and Nick is right. You kind of have to get married in spite of the of the crap that you're gonna deal with, or how women are. I love my wife, love her to death. But you're never gonna catch me doing what Coleman is doing here and going, I just I can't even I can't even I can't even imagine somebody being annoyed with women. It's just that's an anathema to me. What kind of man gets annoyed with women? You're a simp, bro. You're a simp, constitutionally weak, and your boss is Jewish.
Be fruitful and multiply. The immigrants he's so worried about will certainly be doing just that. And more importantly, why do Rumble Nick and podcast
I also think it's funny that Coleman says the immigrants he's so worried about. Are you not worried about immigration, Coleman? I thought the Free Press was a center-right outlet. You're kind of showing your hand here a little bit. You don't think immigration's a problem? He's so worried about the immigrants. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. This dismissive tone, this, well, if you're so worried about the immigrants, I think that's a completely valid concern. And again, it just goes into that's why he's popular, is because he's um, correctly identifying the concerns of the right wing in a way that people like Coleman are not. He's just dismissive. He's like, "Huh, if you're so worried about the immigrants, yeah, I think a lot of people are worried about the immigrants. That's not something to just shrug off."
Nick seem to be two totally different people? While it's normal to come across a bit differently in different contexts, the two versions of Nick Fuentes seem to have different beliefs altogether. Podcast Nick, for
Okay, so we're going to get into specific examples, I guess, of how he contradicts himself. I'm curious.
example, insists that he's a patriotic American who just wants to put our country first. But Rumble Nick believes that America is an evil country, that, quote, Americanism is a heresy in the Catholic Church, that we must replace American democracy with a dictatorship and ultimately enforce what he calls Catholic Taliban rule in America.
That's why we need dictatorship. That's unironically why we need to get rid of all that. We need to take control of the media or take control of the government and force the people to believe what we believe, or force them to play by our rules and reshape the society.
Podcast Nick will tell you that he's celibate because, like a good
Um, yeah, I mean, that clip is from a while ago. That's his old studio, so that's at least probably 3 or 4 years old. I mean, he did go on Tucker or not Tucker, Piers and Tucker, I believe, and say that he doesn't want a Catholic theocracy. Um, I mean, like I said, views change over time, and yeah, I mean, obviously, we need a strong executive branch. You know, I'm sorry if he's not completely married to the idea of like having a base democracy or something. Like that's actually a very common sentiment. Um, and I believe that Americanism is actually a heresy in the Catholic Church, actually. Um, so yeah, I mean these things aren't contradictory um, at all. And he's actually spoken about that exact thing like recently on podcasts.
Catholic, he is waiting until marriage. But Rumble Nick will make it crystal clear that his celibacy has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with the fact that he finds women to be, quote, fucking annoying.
Guys get to a certain age and they're like, you know what? Women suck. Like they're talking too much. They're not hot anymore. Like you're fat, you're chubby, you're not as hot as you think you are. You fucking talk too much, you're a bitch.
Podcast Nick will argue that Christians cannot sanction racism and will approvingly cite Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus.
What Nick has said about the gender thing and about why he's celibate, and again, it's like I almost don't even want to address it because it's not my life. Like I don't. I feels a little gay to take interest in what a guy wants to do with women. Like it actually doesn't impact me a whole lot. Uh, why Nick is celibate. Like I actually don't think about Nick Fuentes' sex life. Actually, the same may not apply for Coleman. He's spending a lot of time wondering about Nick's sex life. That doesn't cross my mind frequently. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, what he's saying with regards to why he's celibate is that the point he's making is that guys are guys. Guys want to get laid. Guys do want to have sex, and you do have to repress that urge until you're married, basically. Um, he's not, what he's saying is that the reason he's celibate is not because he read it in the Bible. He's not celibate because he like it's something that you should wait for until marriage. And also dating is cringe and gay. Like that's what he said. He said that he doesn't want to do the girlfriend thing because like The dating part is cringe and it's cucked, basically. And you're spinning plates for the woman. Hey, we're going to go to this place and this place. You're like doing an audition for a woman, which is gay. I mean, I guess Coleman can relate to that because he probably had to shuck and jive for Bari Weiss, his Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss. He probably had to shuck and jive and do a little tap dance for her. So maybe he can relate to that dating moment where you're advertising for a woman because that's what he had to do to get his job working for a Jewish Israeli lesbian spy. So maybe that's why he's a little pressed by that. But yeah, it is gay to do that. Like the dating moment sucks. And he's saying that he's not just going to go out there and like have sex with women because that's immoral. And two, the dating part is annoying, obviously, Coleman. Maybe you liked that part when you were shucking and jiving for Bari Weiss.
Rumblenik will viciously mock liberal Christians for citing this exact same Bible quote and explain that he would rather Christians didn't read the Bible at all than use that specific passage against him.
This is where we get like liberals saying, but the Bible says neither Jew nor Greek, but the Bible says, this is where you get liberals using it against us.
Podcast Nick will roll his eyes at the accusation that he's a Nazi.
Yeah, I mean, what he was saying with regards to the Bible, I'll probably just let this play a little bit more until I find something very interesting. But I mean, this is all just textbook stuff. What he said about not reading the Bible, he wasn't saying people shouldn't read the Bible. He's saying that the multiple interpretations of the Bible led us to these 30,000 different sects of Protestantism, as opposed to the Catholic Church, where you have the magisterium and a leader to interpret the Bible for you and basically explain it to the peasant class, which most of us are, to be honest. Most people should not be reading books, if we're being honest. I know Coleman is very smart. He's very intelligent, classical liberal, and you can tell because he has books behind him. He has stacked, messy books behind him, so therefore he's like a genius. So he probably would be a part of the intellectual class that could interpret the Bible because he's very intelligent because he has scattered books behind him. By the way, guys, I don't know if you noticed that. He's very intelligent because he's a classical liberal and he has books behind him and he has a Jewish Israeli spy lesbian boss. So he's very smart. But for the rest of us peasants, we probably need somebody to interpret the Bible for us, as opposed to what you have with Protestantism, where you have all these different interpretations, and now you have 30,000 different sects of Protestantism. That's what he was saying. He wasn't saying don't read the Bible, genius.
Like the character Mark Ravenhead from Succession, he'll make you seem ridiculous for even asking the question. But Rumblenik thinks that Hitler was, quote, really fucking cool.
That's funny. He has a Succession reference. I did like Ravenhead in that show. That was supposed to be Tucker Carlson, I think. So yeah, that's a pretty good call out. But yeah, I mean, look, he's not a Nazi. I don't know and it's like what he's saying here is that Nick will say he's not a Nazi, but he'll also say Hitler was cool. Okay, those two things are not incompatible, actually. The Nazis are like the Blood Tribe people. Who's that group? I think it's called the Blood Tribe, where they, hold up swastikas over overpasses. They wear armbands. They're in black and red. Those guys are self-identified Nazis. All you can do is take Nick at his word. If he's not a Nazi, I don't. Is there some secret footage out there of him, at a Nazi rally throwing up Romans or something? Like, no, he's said he's not a Nazi, and he thinks that like Stalin and Hitler are like interesting historical figures. Those two things are not incompatible, Coleman.
He believes that probably only 200,000 or 300,000 Jews were killed by the Nazis, definitely not 6 million. And just last week he said, and not for the first time, that he finds the notion of Nazi gas chambers hard to believe.
People talk about, well, what about the gas chambers? Well, to the extent that that's real, I find that hard to believe, but to the extent that's real, there have been atrocities committed and genocides committed in all times and all places. Let's acknowledge why Hitler casts the long shadow, because that confers a political benefit upon Jews. That's why.
Rumblenik also argues that the Jews, quote,
That's obviously true. Like he's not even like it's so annoying. It's like I was actually expecting a little bit more rigorous of a video from Coleman, honestly. Because like I said, I'm not being ironic here. I do believe actually that Coleman is an intelligent guy. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's low IQ. He probably has a higher IQ than me, if I'm being honest. But I was expecting something more rigorous. I was expecting him to watch these clips. I may just end this soon because if this is what it's going to be, this is actually not fruitful. I expected him to watch the clips and then kind of debunk them like what I'm doing with Coleman. I expected him to be at my level and he's not. All he's doing is the mainstream media grab bag of clips. He's going, but he said this, and then he said this, and then he said this. You're not actually engaging with what he's saying. You're just saying like, well, here's a clip where he said, but no, no, no. Like actually engage with the, like, for example, that last video that they just played, or that he just played. He said that the the H cost, I don't want to get banned on YouTube. So the H cost um, confers a political benefit on Jewish people. That is obviously true. It's very clearly weaponized against the West um, as a reason to never be right wing, to never control your borders, to never get tough on crime, because that's what Hitler did. That's obviously true. Like, if you disagree with that, break it down. Say, well, here's why I don't believe that Jews weaponize atrocities to their own benefit. Like, actually engage with the idea. All he's saying is, can you freaking believe that he said that? It's this very school marmy. And again, maybe he's working a little bit too much with his Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss, because he's becoming this is very feminine. This is very like, hey, you're not going to get freaking laid if those girls hear what you had to say about the Jewish people. It's this very like tattletale-y, feminine way of addressing things. Like, actually get into the meat of what he's saying. You're not doing that. You're just throwing a clip up and saying, can you freaking believe he said this? It's very tired.
Are responsible for every war in the world. It's not even debatable at this point, which could literally be an entry in Joseph Goebbels' diary. Podcast Nick frames his opposition to interracial.
Bro, what are we doing here? He said, this could literally be a freaking entry in Joseph Goebbels' diary. Freaking, this is a freaking diary freaking entry. Maybe he has been hanging out with Bari Weiss too much, because between him saying the people are not adequately concerned about Nick Fuentes to saying this could be a freaking diary entry in Goebbels' diary, freaking, like, this is just like textbook kvetching, dude. Like, put on your yarmulke and wear your Teflon or whatever. Wrap your arms up in black masking tape, because you are the best Shabbos goy out there. You are the best one. You've learned how to mimic their talking points. You've learned how to mimic their faux concern, all of it. You are the best Shabbos goy out there, Coleman. Maybe they'll give you the Xavier DeRusso treatment and give you like an honorary day in Florida for defending the Jewish people so much, because you have gone leaps and bounds over what you were supposed to do. So kudos, Coleman.
marriage mainly as a personal preference that wouldn't affect anyone else. Rumblenik believes that the Jim Crow system was actually superior to the integrated society that we have today, the logical implication being that we should bring it back.
I'm a new generation of white person. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a fuck.
Podcast Nick wants to reassure Tucker.
So let's get into the race thing a little bit. What does Coleman say here?
Personal preference that wouldn't affect. Not even debatable at this point, which could literally be an entry in Joseph Goebbels' diary.
Literally.
Podcast Nick frames his opposition to interracial marriage mainly as a personal preference that wouldn't affect anyone else. Rumblenik believes that the Jim Crow system was actually superior to the integrated society that we have today, the logical implication being that we should bring it back.
I'm a new.
So he's saying that Rumble Nick believes in Jim Crow, but that Interview Nick thinks that interracial marriage is something that affects people on a personal level. Yeah, I mean, those two can coexist. He's just simply not incorrect in saying that, like, basically what Coleman is upset with is that he's not bowing down to the foundation myth of our country, which is like desegregation. So he's upset that Nick, and this is the clip he uses. He doesn't cite a clip actually where Nick says we should bring Jim Crow back, although to a certain extent I would agree with that actually. Like, you don't have to bring back Jim Crow, but you could enforce freedom of association, basically. You could repeal the Civil Rights Act, basically. And there is actually starting to be a little bit of traction behind that idea, which is a good thing. But yeah, I mean, Nick isn't bowing before the altar of desegregation. So Coleman says, well, Podcast Nick says that interracial marriage is something that each person can decide for themselves. But Rumble Nick believes in Jim Crow. The clip he uses, Nick doesn't say we should bring back Jim Crow, even though if he said that, I would largely agree. The clip that he shows of Nick to bolster his point is Nick saying that he wants to practice freedom of association. I mean, as a classical liberal, Coleman, I think you would be supportive of that, right? Aren't you this classical liberal who believes in freedom of association and not too much government intervention? Aren't you a classical liberal? Freedom of association is 100% in line with that. So, you know, he can get mad and kvetch all he wants, which is probably what he learned from his Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss, Bari Weiss. You can kvetch all you want, but freedom of association is actually completely in line with your classical liberal belief system, Coleman. So again, the problem here is that Coleman isn't actually engaging. I would be curious, actually, from a big brain like Coleman, to tell me in what way classical liberalism clashes with the idea of freedom of association. In what world are classical liberalism and freedom of association not compatible? What world? Is it just the world where you're upset that Nick isn't bowing before the freaking altar of the freaking desegregation based MLK? Like, that's your only critique. I'm curious. Like, freedom of association is a classical liberal idea. And you can say, well, that's just code for segregation. Call it whatever you want. If I want to open a business and put a big fat sign on the door that says, we do not serve black people, let's say, or we do not serve people with cornrows and dreads, or we do not serve people who smell like weed, that is completely in line with classical liberalism, actually. And there's nothing wrong with that. So the clip you're citing here doesn't even prove your point. It actually makes you look a little bit dishonest because isn't that your belief system also, Coleman?
We don't want to harm anybody. We don't want to kill anybody. We just want to put America first. But Rumblenik routinely says things like,
we're in a holy war, and I will tell you this. Because we're willing to die in the holy war, we will make them die in the holy war. They have no future in America. The enemies of Christ have no future in this world.
lest there be any doubt.
I mean, yeah, he's saying like it metaphorically, they're gonna, yeah. Look, man, this is kind of tiresome, actually. I'm probably gonna call it soon because he's not engaging. I expected something a lot more rigorous from this video. You're getting my real reaction. I only watched the first 20 seconds of this before I started this video. And I was expecting Coleman to actually and maybe not successfully, but try to deconstruct his ideas. That would be interesting. And then I could engage with that. All I'm sitting here doing is explaining why Nick is right in his own clips. Like there's nothing rigorous here. He's just pulling out of the grab bag. And I guess what his point is that there are two different Nicks. And I think what I've kind of shown in these videos is that these two different Nicks that he's talking about are not incompatible at all. And that's for one. And two, obviously you speak differently to different crowds. What I'm saying is that nothing that he has said actually contradicts the two. One may be a little bit more polished, one may involve a little less swearing, but the belief system holds true. And he's not undermining himself, he's not contradicting himself. And I wish Coleman would actually, like I said, engage with the ideas instead of doing the grab bag thing. It's very tiresome.
About his violent intentions. Rumblenik went on this unironic rant in January 2024, worth quoting at length.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. So many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country, they are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. They must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. This is God's country. This is Jesus' country. This is not the domain of atheists or devil worshippers or perfidious Jews. This is Christ's country.
So Nick Fuentes is essentially a two-man operation.
It's not a two-man operation. Yeah, I mean, what I would say on that one is that, and this is kind of something that I've come around on also, is the morality of the death penalty. I'm willing to be convinced either way. I do kind of get the point that in modern society, the need for the death penalty isn't fully there. Like we have the technology now to be able to imprison somebody for life. but just kind of instinctually, I do think that certain crimes warrant the death penalty. That's an issue where I just completely defer to the Catholic Church. So yeah, I mean, I'm not huge either way on it, but what I'm saying is that Nick has also changed his views on the death penalty in the last couple years. Um, so yeah, I mean, people, like I said, people change. People's views change, Coleman. I used to like you, for example. I used to think Coleman Hughes was a based black guy. Now all I see is a Shabbos goy shucking and jiving for his Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss. That's all I see now. So Nick is allowed to change his views also, and I think what he was saying there is that the enemies of Christ would get the death penalty. Um, yeah, I mean, look, in society at one point, that's what we did. If you were a heretic, you got the death penalty. I mean, yeah, that's what it was. Now, maybe he wouldn't agree with that with that line of thinking now, fair. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's not calling for mass executions. Um, yeah, he was saying that the enemies of Christ need to be taken out of power, and I think his views on the death penalty have changed. It's not that crazy.
Rumble Nick energizes his core fans by attacking minorities, attacking women, and attacking America. And then Podcast Nick runs interference with the wider media, framing his sincerely racist rants as out-of-context clips, confident that most of, say, Tucker Carlson's audience will never see his Rumble streams, and thus will never realize that adding context usually makes his clips sound worse, not better. By playing this double game, Nick Fuentes ends up garnering sympathy from that wider audience while still keeping his Groyper base energized. To make an analogy, it's Rumble Nick who commits all the crimes in private, but it's Podcast Nick who shows up to the televised court date clean-shaven in a three-piece suit. I want to go out on a limb and suggest something that I can't prove. Nick Fuentes knows exactly what he's doing. He is consciously playing this double game as part of a long-term strategy to become popular enough to take the reins of power, at which point he plans to pivot towards the extreme and unpopular policies that he advocates daily on Rumble.
Okay, so he's saying that his secret game is to take power someday, something that he said he actually doesn't want to do. People ask him that all the time. People ask, do you plan on running for office? Do you want to take power? He's routinely said he really doesn't have any intentions of doing that. Um, but like Coleman said, I'm gonna submit something that I have no evidence for. Yeah, you don't have evidence for it because it's stupid. Um, this idea that Nick wants to become president and then just start killing people is ridiculous. Um, he is a podcaster. He is a political commentator. Um, this paranoid kvetching is very Jewish, and it reeks of him having a Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss, which he does, and rubbing his hands together and kvetching and saying, "Oy vey, when he takes power, they're gonna kill all of us." It's like, yeah, well then maybe you should get out of the room. I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, it's silly, and Nick has actually said the opposite of that, that he doesn't want to run for political office. He said maybe before, but it's kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the video. What you have from Coleman here is this it's this overcomplication. Look at the mental gymnastics he has to go through in order to explain Nick's success. So what I said at the beginning is Nick's success is very easy to explain. Um, People like his show. People find him appealing. They think he's funny. They think not only do they think he's funny, but they think his analysis is prescient and correct. So they tune in and they keep watching. That's the story of me, at least. I didn't tune in because I said, this is the most canceled guy in the world. I'm just going to see what he has to say, and I'm just going to watch for 9 years. No, people tune in. They see that he's not this some stupid guy just yelling slurs at a camera. His analysis is correct, and they keep watching. What Coleman has to do, on the other hand, is say, okay, guys, it's actually really, to steal a line from Nick, it's actually really complicated. What he's doing is he's playing a double game. So what he does is he wears a suit to the interviews and he says good things, but then after he gets off there, he takes off his mask and it's like it's like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. And then he rubs his hands maliciously and goes, ha ha ha, I fooled the Goyim today. Time to be extreme on Rumble. No, Coleman. It's that people like him and they think he's correct. And obviously you speak differently to different audiences. That everybody does that. I would be shocked if Coleman, well, maybe he is actually this low frequency. Maybe he is just who he is on camera. But I would be shocked if Coleman didn't do the same thing. Obviously, you speak differently to different people. It's not that crazy. And as I've established, he wasn't even able to prove that the two statements he's claiming that are contradictory are in fact contradictory. He wasn't able to prove that. I debunked plenty of those. I said, look, maybe this one is a little more polished up, but it doesn't actually contradict the other views that you're saying he has. And a lot of times, the clips that he was showing, uh, exemplified in the Jim Crow video, he's not even saying what Coleman claims he's saying. He's saying he wants to bring back Jim Crow. Meanwhile, all Nick said is basically that he supports freedom of association, which is something that Coleman should believe in also as a classical liberal. And that is actually something I do want to pose to Coleman directly is like, what about classical liberalism makes it contradicts freedom of association? That's when all these libertarians get very uncomfortable. I remember, damn, who was it? He was on Dave Rubin's show. I want to say it was like Rand Paul. Don't quote me on that. But Dave Rubin basically interviewed like a classical liberal libertarian. It was either Rand Paul, Ron Paul, or Thomas Sowell. One of those three. And if you know, you know, but those three are basically ideologically same person, for the most part. But he was interviewing one of those three, and Dave Rubin, like, it's actually a pretty good interview moment from him. He followed their logic consistently. He followed it through. He said, "So, if you're a libertarian and you support freedom of association, would you support like repealing the Civil Rights Act? Like, how far do we go?" And I forget who it was. It was either Ron Paul, Rand Paul, or Thomas Sowell. They said, "Well, I mean, I support freedom of association, but let's not take it too far." Basically, they said, let's not get carried away and do things like overthrowing the Civil Rights Act. That's where the ideology falls apart. Because basically what they're saying is, I believe what I believe until it makes people feel bad, until I come against the wall of the altar of civil rights. I bow before that altar like a good Shabbos goy. But my ideology is leading me to a place where the only logical conclusion is like, yeah, we need to like overturn the Civil Rights Act, obviously. So yeah, I mean that's kind of a tangent, but like, yeah, nothing Nick said in that clip even did what Coleman said it did. That is the logical endpoint of Coleman's beliefs.
I'm not pulling this out of thin air. Nick Fuentes has indicated that he has political ambitions. At the same time, he openly admits that his actual views are not popular enough to win a national election, and that his Groyper movement will never be big enough to take power by force. His implied plan, in other words, is to soft pedal his extreme views just enough to build a large following, large enough to actually.
He doesn't cite this at all. He says he contradicts what I just said there. I've been watching Nick's show. I don't think I've missed an episode in 8 years, actually. Um, Even on my honeymoon when I was in Bali, I watched every episode. When I was in Spain for 2 weeks, I watched every episode. I have not missed an episode. And what I've routinely heard from Nick is that he's open to the idea of running for president, but he doesn't. And Coleman is right about one thing. He said that he thinks his views would preclude him from reaching national office. There's probably some truth to that, but he's never expressed like if you're being honest, you could never say like he talks about wanting national power all the time. It's probably something that he's flirting with, the idea in his head, but he's never said like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So you are reading way too much into it. You're interneting too hard, Coleman.
Win an election, and then remove the mask and begin implementing his extreme ideas at the first available opportunity. We've seen this playbook before. When the history buff Daryl Cooper first sprang into the mainstream on Tucker Carlson's show, where he claimed that Winston Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War, it immediately touched off an argument about whether Cooper was really a Nazi sympathizer. His critics believe that he obviously was. I mean, why else would he be regurgitating long debunked Nazi talking points? But his defender claimed that he was just a good faith history buff given to occasional hyperbole.
And see, this is where you realize their issue is with Nick, obviously. And I am going to cite it again. Coleman Hughes has a Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss in Bari Weiss. And I didn't know that he was going to bring up Daryl Cooper. It's funny because you realize that their issue really isn't even what Nick has to say about women. That's peripheral. That's ancillary. That's just supplemental info. What they're really afraid of, and you can tell this because they cited Daryl Cooper, who doesn't talk even about the same things as Nick. They're also worried about Daryl Cooper. They're worried about Nick. What do those two have in common? They are questioning the they are questioning Jewish power. They are not completely beholden to post World War II consensus ideology. They are not scared off by saying the bad man's name, Hitler. They are not scared off by that. They are willing to engage in a little bit of historical revisionism. Um, and that's very telling that he's citing Daryl Cooper here, because this almost sounds like Barry Weiss has her hand so far up Coleman's ass that you can see her mouth moving his mouth, because this is a very Jewish concern. He's working for the Free Press. He has a Jewish boss. His Jewish boss is buying CBS and making sure criticism of Israel doesn't get too big. And now he's complaining in the same breath about Nick Fuentes and Daryl Cooper. Daryl Cooper doesn't talk about women. Daryl Cooper doesn't talk about the Civil Rights Act or anything. Daryl Cooper's big thing is World War II revisionism, and you're citing him as somebody to be scared of because you guys were afraid of the conversation surrounding Israel and Jewish influence.
And they had a point. There was plenty of smoke, but no fire. Then, sure enough, the proof came. Mother Jones unearthed a comment that Cooper had allegedly made years earlier under an anonymous username on the white nationalist website Countercurrents. Quote, "A movement like this needs to operate at various levels."
White nationalist outlet. Countercurrents, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I mean, they've done good work. I think that's Greg Johnson's outlet, I want to say. I think Richard Spencer did some work for them at some point. Um, they're worried about the Jewish influence thing. They're worried about rising criticism of Israel. And he lets the mask slip at the very end here. We only have 2 minutes left. He lets the mask slip. He spent 15 minutes saying he hates women, he hates minorities, and he also hates Jews. And then that ends up being like the crescendo. That ends up being the crux of his whole thing. Well, did you know that Daryl Cooper was a white nationalist and he's critical of Winston Churchill and he questions World War II? He questions Jewish influence. That's what they're really concerned about. You really get that they tie a nice bow on it. That's what they're concerned about. All the other stuff is just to prime you. It's to prime your brain to get ready for all these evil things this horrible Nazi is going to say. And then at the end they give you the delivery, they give you the package. They say, but the real problem is that we're worried about criticism of Israel and Jewish power. That's what this really boils down to.
From the intellectual core that remains terrifying and offensive to the general population right up until the big shift, on up to covert supporters slipping occasional language and subversive information into conversation and normie media. Juggernaut Nihilism wrote, "Think of how most people you know got here. It wasn't from basic American ideology to reading Mein Kampf and then boom, they're on board. It's a process, and you have to initiate people without scaring them off and without blaming them for being scared off. The human mind works the way it works, and the enemy studies it carefully, controls the education system, and dominates the media." In other words, everyone who suspected that Cooper's contrarianism was really meant to be a gateway drug to Nazism was spot on. It's rare in the world of public intellectuals that we get such a perfect
It's not a gateway to Nazism. It's questioning the foundation myth of America. And, for somebody who's a classical liberal and just wants freedom of ideas to win out, well, I think we're seeing that play out right now. I think we're seeing uh, the apex of what it looks like when you have freedom of information and you're allowed to consume media that is not heavily, regulated and heavily funded by people like your Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss. We're seeing what that looks like when people get freedom of information, when people have the ability to speak freely and ask questions, just asking questions, they end up questioning, hey, why do we still bow at the altar of this genocide that happened like 100 years ago when there are genocides happening today by the same people that claim to be victimized by, like people end up asking these questions, and that's where we're at. You're a classical liberal, man. Like, hey, your ideology won out, and people are starting to ask the right questions. So it's not a gateway to Nazism. It's that people are questioning the foundation myth of America, and they're really starting to question, like, why do we care so much if blacks and Jews get offended? Like, why do I care? And I say this as a black guy, like, I want a good society for my daughter. I want a good society for my wife, my kids, my family, my community, my city, my state. Why do I care if a black person is going to get mad along the way? Why do I care if some Jewish person is like, "Oy vey, how you're talking could lead us to another one. It's another crystal knocked." Yeah, I actually don't care what you have to say. I'm an American. You're not. Coleman, you're an American. Your boss is an Israeli Jewish lesbian spy, and I don't care what she's kvetching about. That's what's going on. It's not that people are on the way to wearing an armband and goose stepping down the road and throwing up Romans. It's that people are saying, you know what? I don't care about this myth. It's not even, what's funny is it's not even like people are very hung up on the official numbers of the H cost. People are not, I mean, some people are, to fair point to them. But what people are really saying is like, could have been 6 million, could have been 100 million. I'm not going to be morally bludgeoned by this event that I had no part in over 100 years ago. And I'm not going to let it dictate who I listen to, what media I watch, what media I consume, who's going to bully me. People don't care anymore, Coleman. And your Jewish boss can do as much as she wants to get people to care. But if we're being honest, that genocide was like 100 years ago. I don't care if that number's wrong. I don't care if it was 85 years ago. The point is that it was generations ago and people don't care, and you cannot make them care. You are losing.
Information that a bad faith actor is indeed acting in bad faith. With Nick Fuentes, we don't need to wait for the smoking gun. He says what he believes every day on Rumble. If only we would listen.
He does say what he believes. That's part of the appeal. That's what you don't get. And it's like he's just upset, but like really fundamentally what he's upset about is that people, and he laid it out earlier. He said people are not adequately appropriately concerned about Nick. Um, what he's upset about is that people are not like shocked by what he's saying, and a lot of people are nodding along saying, "Yeah, I agree." Um, they want you kvetching. His Jewish Israeli spy lesbian boss wants you kvetching. They want you to be the kid in the corner saying, "Oh, they're saying naughty words, teacher. Teacher, they said a naughty word." People aren't doing that. We're done with the moralizing. We're done with the weight, the the Damocles sword of the Holocaust hanging over our heads. People are done, man. And there's nothing you can do to fix that. You can blame it on the Streisand effect. You can blame it on he's playing a double game. He's doing a bait and switch. It doesn't matter, dude. It's out of the bag. It's over.
All we have to do is clear away the various smokescreens that he's thrown up to blind us to the sincerity of his dark ambitions. Cancel culture doesn't work, but it's not a choice.
Who wrote that sentence for him? Listen to that sentence. That's a
Away the various smokescreens that on Rumble. If only we would listen. All we have to do is clear away the various smokescreens that he's thrown up to blind us to the sincerity of his dark ambitions.
all we have to do is throw away the smoke screens that blind us to the sincerity of his ambitions. Dude, you have some you have like this Jewish Stanley Levison writing for you. You have like MLK's ghostwriter or something because I don't know that Coleman came up with that himself, but it's like this very, that kind of those kind of linguistic tricks work on boomers and they work on women. He's blinding us to the sincerity of his ambitions with a smokescreen that we need to throw away. Dude, this is not a romance novel, okay? Um, he's very open about what he believes. You may not like it, but 50,000 people per night disagree with you, Coleman.
Cancel culture doesn't work, but it's not a choice between cancellation on the one end and giving friendly interviews to Nazi sympathizers on the other.
Well, what is the middle ground there? I'm curious.
Doesn't work, but it's not a choice between cancellation on the one end and giving friendly interviews to Nazi sympathizers on the other. What podcast hosts need to do is confront Nick Fuentes with the malevolent viewpoints that he has repeatedly and recently expressed and arm themselves with the facts required to rebut him in real time. Or to put it differently, they need to be journalists. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, what he's saying is like we shouldn't cancel him, but we also shouldn't interview him. And what he says the middle ground is that people who interview him should come armed with the facts and rebut him. So they're angry that Tucker didn't push back enough. Um, what I'm curious about is like, what does that look like? Like fundamentally, what you're saying, like you could almost hear this coming from them. Like like would he really support Nick being on like a mainstream podcast, or would Coleman say you're platforming hate, basically? Um, I have a feeling he leans towards we shouldn't platform him at all. And we've seen what it looks like when people try to go hostile with Nick. Piers Morgan just got done doing that for 2 hours. Um, I actually think even Crowder did a pretty good job of holding him to account and saying, like, you believe this? I'm confused. I mean, look, man, he answers it flawlessly. So you're saying if only somebody could just do a better job and really nail him, is what Coleman is saying. He's saying if only they came armed with the facts to own and epically own him, then the bait and switch game would be finished once and for all. Dude, people have tried, like people have tried to do this and it hasn't worked. What I would say to Coleman is like, are you going to try to do this? Or so here's the thing, Coleman, would you interview Nick and come armed with the facts and epically own him? Or if it was presented to you to have Nick on your show, would you say, I'm not going to platform hate? You probably say, I'm not going to platform that. I'm not, that's a trap. I'm falling into his trap if I do that. He would probably say that as opposed to saying, I'm going to be the one to take him down. I hope, hey, look, here's to hoping Coleman will do a hostile interview with Nick and see how that goes for you. See how that goes. And many have tried. Maybe you'll be the one, Coleman, and maybe your Jewish lesbian Israeli spy boss will give you good Shabbos Goy points, and she'll make you shuck and jive for 30 less seconds each day. Maybe you'll get a little bonus. Maybe you'll get some fried chicken. I don't know. Maybe you'll get some really cool stocking stuffers. Oh wait, Bari Weiss probably hates Christmas. So maybe you'll get some good Hanukkah gifts. So yeah, you should. Coleman, by all means, if you think you're the one to do it, I say have at it. I say you shoot for the stars and you try to really take down Nick with facts and logic. You could do it. I think you could do it, Coleman.
Impish contrarianism. It's not clips taken out of context. It's not irony or hyperbole, at least not in any sense that's actually exculpatory. It's a calculated and radical attempt to take over first the conservative movement and then the country. The only question now is, will the real conservatives, wherever they are, let it happen?
Will the real conservatives let it happen? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what the real conservatives are going to do. It's already done, man. It's already done. He won. His ideology is mainstream. Not just his ideology, but him as a guy, like Nick Fuentes himself, is mainstream. People like him. People don't tune into the show and say, "Well, I can't stand Nick, but I do like his ideas." It's if anything, it's the opposite. People say, even insofar as people disagree, they go, "Well, I don't really love everything he says, but I love him." Dude, it's already over. The conservatives couldn't conserve America. You think they're gonna keep this incredibly charismatic 27-year-old out of the public convo? Like, dude, you're cooked. It's over. Um, and yeah, I mean, probably wrap up here, but yeah, I mean, this is what you see from these people. It's not rigorous. It's not intellectual. It's not academic at all. Coleman never like actually like really think about this entire video I just did and what you just saw from Coleman Hughes. Did he actually debunk, like substantively critique or dismantle anything Nick had to say? No, not at all. All he did was throw clips at you. He went, well, look at this one, look at this one, look at this one. And he never actually said, like, I keep going back to the Jim Crow thing, but he never, like, that was a perfect example. Not only did the clip not say what he said it would say, Coleman never even tried to debunk it. He just said, this guy said this crazy thing. Isn't that crazy? It's like, dude, we're beyond that. We're not in kindergarten anymore. We can analyze the arguments on their own merits. And yeah, they're very stuck in this like school marmy uh pathologizing armchair psychology kind of thing where they go, it's a very complicated double game he's doing. Nope, not that complicated. And if only they took a page out of his book with the authenticity, maybe they could get somewhere, but that's not their strong suit. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will be back soon with another video. Thanks, guys. Bye.